I'm Sam.
And this is Gabe.
And this is Coaster Wars.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coasters Wars podcast, the only podcast that takes two roller coasters and compares them to each other. Yes, believe it or not, we're actually doing that in this episode.
We're back to our bread and butter. We finally got a good old-fashioned battle episode back for you guys. And we've got two fun ones to talk about. I'm excited for this episode.
Two coasters that once again probably would never be talked about in the same conversation. That is for sure.
Yes.
I will say this though, I would consider both these coasters terrain coasters, and I would consider both these coasters from classic manufacturers, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, actually. They're two personal favorites, I believe. I mean, obviously mine.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yes. So with that, Gabe, why don't you introduce our fighters?
Oh, shoot. I forgot I had to do that. I forgot that was a thing. Okay,
are you going to be good?
Yeah, I was not prepared. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
You tell we haven't done this in a while, guys?
In the red corner, standing at a top height of 163 feet and reaching a top speed of 63 miles per hour, hailing from the hills of Tennessee and the aerodynamics gym, it is the Tennessee Tornado. In the blue corner, standing at a top height of 70 feet and reaching a top speed of 42 miles per hour, hailing from the farm fields of Illinois and the Schwarzkopf Gym, it is the Wizard. Let the fight begin. I feel like that was one of my better ones, honestly.
It was, yes. No, very good job.
Anyway, so the coaster that I am bringing to this battle is Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. One of the personal favorite coasters of mine, a very unique, very random coaster. Just a coaster that, every time we come up with a theme for an episode, I just couldn't quite shoehorn it in. There's probably one episode later on down the line where we're going to be talking about custom layout arrows where I could have thrown this in. But yeah, this is the coaster I wanted to talk about, but couldn't find a reason to.
And the one that I'm bringing is called the Wizard at Six Flags Great America, and it is a Schwarzkopf. And same thing, couldn't really shoehorn it into any episode, but it's at our home park, and I freaking love this coaster. We usually ride it at least a couple times whenever we go to Great America, and an added perk is it usually has a short line, so you usually don't have to wait too long for it either.
Yeah, both coasters, I would not, you're never going to find either of these coasters on a top 10 list or, the best roller coaster at a park even. Both coasters, I would say, get forgotten about at their respective home parks of Six Flags Great America. I mean, just the lineup of Great America alone, this is near the bottom. And then Tennessee Tornado is kind of the same thing. It kind of gets forgot about. Just one of those coasters where, you get off of it, you go ride, a lightning rod or a thunderhead, and it's like, oh, that's just another coaster that's there,
Oh,
but both of these are very, very fun. Why don't we talk about the Wizard first? Because that is a very fun, very great coaster. Schwarzkopf coaster, it is considered a speed racer, or I always called it a toboggan coaster because that's what I thought the cars looked like. I don't know if that's the technical term.
Oh, I know, right?
It's a fun family coaster. That's how I would describe this ride.
Oh, yeah. So when we get into the stats of this thing, it is 3,100 feet of track. It's got a top height of 64 feet, a top speed of 42 miles per hour. But this features what is called an electric spiral lift, which is actually a unique lift system. Instead of just like a straight up lift, it's literally a spiral or a helix that goes upwards. And then something interesting that I didn't know is that the motors for this lift are actually in the cars themselves. It's not like a chain or anything that pulls you up and that gets you to the top of this lift hill. And should I just get into the layout of it?
Yeah, go ahead and just do the layout real quick. I know it's a very simple layout, but just kind of cover it a little bit. And yeah.
Okay. So you start with a slight right out of the station that brings you into a straight piece of track that then leads you into that electric spiral lift. I will say this about the lift hill because it spirals and it goes pretty slow, you get a really nice view of the park and especially a 360 view of the park because, again, it takes you 360 degrees. You then enter a very shallow angled drop that you slowly gather speed on. You definitely reach that top speed of 42 miles per hour by the end, though, and you go
short
flying.
little short
Go
little
ahead.
tidbit, sorry.
Yeah.
I just love it because it is so like it's like not even a drop. It really
No.
isn't. It is so long and drawn out, and it just kind of like it's one of those things that builds like but really slowly, and it just kind of like
Yes.
builds a little bit, builds a little, builds a little bit, and then when you hit the bottom and you're doing that top speed of what is it, 40 some miles per hour,
Yep.
it feels a lot faster than that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes.
Especially because after this, you lead into a banked right turn and you're really close to the ground. So that just like adds to the illusion. You're just like whizzing past the ground all of a sudden. You're like, holy crap. So you then come up into an elevated turnaround with a little bit of trim brakes in there. You then drop back down into a shallow angled drop again, gathering speed again before another banked right turn that brings you even closer to the ground at some point. This is the moment on the ride, Gabe, where you literally feel like your head is going to hit the ground because you're so close. I even think when you look at
That is
it,
very true.
they've like dug it out just a tiny bit to fit the track in. So you're literally like on the same level of the ground. It's actually ridiculous. You then come around that corner into a straight piece of track that ascends before kind of leveling off. As you continue forward, you then enter a banked right turn that dips back down for a tiny bit of speed into another straightaway. He'll then drop down, gathering speed before a banked left curve once again, very close to the ground before coming back up into a slightly banked right turn that leads into a straight piece of track that dips down and enters a descending helix that brings you close to the ground once again, and then you're up into those final breaks. So, like Gabe said, it's a pretty simple layout. But what we have to also know about this ride is one of the first rides actually built. It was part of the opening of this park back when it was Marriott Great America instead of Six Flags Great America. And as such, the foliage has really grown around this ride. You're like
Yes, yes, very
zipping
much.
through the trees and everything. So that adds another effect. I'm pretty sure there's one moment where if you reached out, you could touch the tree. So it makes it, and then, like, if you brought your kids on this, like Gabe said, it's a very fun family coaster, and it's a fun time all around. So, and it usually is a short line, so it's a quick little ride.
Yeah, so there's kind of three parts that I really wanted to talk about. Number one is the restraint system on this roller coaster. There isn't one. That
Yeah.
they're just it's a seatbelt. Literally, that is the only thing that holds you in. Now, obviously, it doesn't go upside down. It doesn't feature crazy intense airtime, not crazy intense G forces. You really don't need a restraint, but just that open feeling of not having like a lap bar or an over the shoulder restraint or
As
like a
in,
comfort collar or something like that makes it feel just a little less safe. I don't know.
I agree. I will say this, those seatbelts are actually a later addition. When it was first built, it
Yes.
must not have had them because they weren't added until what is the year that I have, 1980. So this operated for a few years before it actually had seatbelts. So
Yes, yes. The other part that I kind of wanted to bring into this as well is just the little bit of history, a little bit of nerd part that I know about this coaster. So, for those of you who are like super nerdy into roller coasters, you might have heard of another roller coaster called Zambezi Zinger. That was a roller coaster constructed at Worlds of Fun in 1973, so 3 years prior to the Wizard being constructed at Great America. That is the coaster that inspired the new Zambezi Zinger that they built, I think it was 2 years ago. That also is it's a wooden, I believe it's a wooden GCI, but they built it with a spiral lift hill just like these two coasters. It inspired, and in fact, they reused the name of the original Zambezi Zinger, which is just, again, a nerd thing. But this is actually the only speed racer model from Schwarzkopf still standing. So like I said, they tore down the original Zambezi Zinger. They built the wooden version, but it's just a really cool thing because the spiral lift hill was a very unique feature from Schwarzkopf. And like Sam was describing, there was no chain lift. It's just a motor in the car that drives you up the spiral lift hill. And you can see the little electric things that run underneath it that like
Mm-hmm.
connect to the car to power it. And it's just like, again, a little nerd tidbit there. But this roller coaster, I believe it is an ACE historical landmark as well,
Yep,
correct?
it was awarded ACE landmark status in around 2001 or 2002 as significance is the last standing steel custom built Schwarzkopf speed racer coaster in North America specifically.
Yes.
There is still technically one operating in Colombia as well.
Is there? I did
Another
not know that.
Yes. So another fun part about history on this guy is around the same time, I think only a few months earlier, there was an additional ride of, I don't know if they were clones, but basically another speed racer Schwarzkopf that was built at Marriott's Great America in Santa Clara over in California. And they were both named Willard's Wizard after Willard Marriott, who was the owner or CEO of Marriott at the time. And so they were both operating and they had issues with the braking system, which was causing trains to collide in the station. It happened a lot
Oh.
more. Yeah, it happened a lot more on the Santa Clara model. It only happened twice on the Great America Wizard. But after an incident in the 19 I forget what year it was. It was in the 80s because the Santa Clara one was removed in 88. Basically, there was an incident on the Santa Clara one where a 13-year-old boy actually died. So,
Oh.
as a result of that, that's when they redesigned or redid the braking system and they also added the seatbelts. And then the Santa Clara one was eventually closed down and just taken out. So, it's really actually great that we still have the Wizard. And in 1988, that's when they went to just the Wizard. And that was when the name change was. And then also in 2002, we almost lost the Wizard. They were going
Yes, I was
to
just going to talk about that
yeah,
actually.
they were going to tear it down because of increased maintenance costs and to make way for Superman. And then, due to public backlash and people just outcrying about this ride, they ended up taking out Shockwave instead and putting in Superman, which was an Arrow coaster. I don't know if it was a looper or what.
So, Shockwave was an Arrow Mega Looper. That was the
Oh.
time period where Arrow was trying to dive into higher level thrills than what they've previously done. And Shockwave was known to be a very rough and uncomfortable ride, not very popular in Great America, versus the Wizard being one of the favorites. I mean, there's kind of a cult following for this roller coaster, but for good reason. I mean, being constructed in 1976, you probably have people who grew up riding this and then took their children to also ride it after. So there's a lot of memories, there's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of feelings and just happiness that this coaster has brought over almost 50 years of operation. So to be on that kind of level, it's hard to take a coaster like this out. And now it's also, like I said, an ACE historical landmark coaster. So like it also holds a lot of value in my
Mhm.
opinion. But yeah, this coaster is just a lot of fun. The other aspect that I was going to talk about real quick here is it is a terrain coaster. It really is. Because like you were mentioning how they like dug out the ground and it gets you really, really close. It does feel like a terrain coaster. It runs like a terrain coaster. I know saying that, it's in the middle of Illinois where it's completely flat and farm fieldy, but there is a little bit of a hill where this sits on. There is like a pond area too down there, isn't there? Or like a little
Yeah.
spot with water. So it kind of goes around that too. And it's got like a little retaining pond. So it is a terrain coaster and it does make it feel faster than that 42-mile-per-hour top
Oh, yeah.
speed. I think that's another reason why this coaster is a lot of fun because you can go on it as a young child and this might be your first ever credit.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where, for me, this roller coaster holds a lot of significance is the historical aspect and also just the nostalgia aspect of a ride like this.
Oh yeah, it's always a favorite of mine and Gabe's too. And it doesn't have too much theming, but I've always loved the station that the Wizard has too. It kind of
Oh,
looks like
yes.
a an old-timey building. It's painted in yellow and white and just looks really cool. So, yeah, it's so much fun every time you go. It feels a lot faster because of all the trees and everything that you pass by, and you do get a little bit of a thrill when you get that close to the ground. I can imagine even as a young kid, you're just like, wow. So yeah, this is a very fun ride. Highly recommend anytime you go to Six Flags Great America. But with that, why don't we get into the Tennessee tornado? And as a small
Yes.
tidbit before Gabe gets into this, as he was talking about how it gets forgotten, I literally have no memory of riding this ride, which is horrible. I like completely blanked. So I'm gonna let Gabe tell me all about what I apparently rode.
Yes, Tennessee Tornado, located at the Dollywood Park in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It stands at a top height of 163 feet, which is higher than I realized, but it only has a top drop of 128 feet. I'll get into that in the layout in a little bit. Free inversions, but this coaster also has some really interesting history. This is an aerodynamics roller coaster that was constructed in 1999. This is the second to last coaster that they ever designed, they ever constructed, and they ever built. This is right before they went out of business. But the two things that I talk about on this roller coaster is it features heartlining and it features computer designed track.
Oh,
So this was Arrow's first, or I think technically second. I'll have to look to see when the Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Fiesta Texas was built, because that also features heartlining and computer aided design track. I don't remember which one came first. But anyway, so this is a lot smoother, a lot more comfortable ride experience than pretty much any other Arrow you've ever ridden, because like Arrow is like the definition of janky. Like, let's just be honest here.
yes.
So because of that, a lot of the arrows were not very well received, especially the larger arrows that featured drops over 100 feet, this being one of those. However, because it does feature heartlining and computer aided track design, it's a lot smoother, it's a lot more comfortable. It doesn't have like what I call the speed bumping or the triangle effect that you get on other arrows. It's just a really unique
Yes.
and really interesting roller coaster. I love this thing, and that's why I wanted to talk about it in this episode. It's a personal favorite of mine. It's definitely not the best ride at Dollywood, obviously, but it is still a reason to go to Dollywood, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But should I get into the layout of this roller coaster?
Yes, sir.
All right, so start from the beginning here. You take a turn out of the station and you go through a really dark and kind of spooky tunnel before climbing the lift hill. And at the top of the lift hill, you come down, and I want to say it's probably like a 40-foot drop. It's a really shallow drop, and this puts you into a 180-degree turn before going into the initial drop that is that biggest drop at 128 feet. However, due to the terrain at Dollywood, you actually drop into a tunnel. Like, you actually drop into the side of the hill,
Huh.
and that creates a really unique thing. So you drop into that tunnel, you go through that first drop. It's really, really cool. You pop up into the first vertical loop that stands at almost 100 feet tall. It is a massive, massive loop. Then you pop up into a right hand overbanked curve that sends you into the second vertical loop. After that, you pop up into what is called a sidewinder element. This is a brand new element from Arrow. It's kind of like half a cobra roll, half corkscrew. It's a very unique element, and you can't find that on any other Arrow. After that, you pop up into another banked curve, which sends you into the final brakes, which sends you into the station. So it is a very short layout, and that's probably why you would not remember it as much. However, it is a very intense layout. It's a very unique layout.
I will also say this too, because of where the Tennessee tornado is situated, It's at like the back of the park, and even then, that's like where the station is, and then like the actual coaster itself just goes further back into the hills and trees and stuff. I don't know that we got one, but I can imagine that a night ride on this guy has to feel a lot like the Beast, kind of in the back with no lights, kind of in the middle of nowhere without any other coasters around. I bet a night ride on this guy is freaking awesome.
Yeah, here's a description that I found on RCDB of that Sidewinder element. This will help describe it. It starts like the first half of a traditional vertical loop. When the train is near the loop's apex, it will be inverted and heading back in the direction it entered. Rather than completing the loop the traditional way, the train rolls on the axis, becoming sight right up while simultaneously turning away from the loop. Another good way to describe this element would be almost like a cutback element, I think.
Okay.
It's just a very, like I said, it's a very unique loop. It's not quite like an Immelman loop. It's not quite like a corkscrew. It's just a very, very unique design, and it's the
Hmm.
only one you can find on an arrow.
Yeah.
So that's why and it's a very intense, forceful moment too. Like when you go into it, like you pull some forces, and that's what this roller coaster is all about, except for the first drop. In the back row, the first drop is actually really, really good for airtime, I think.
Ooh.
Yes. So you get some really good airtime. You go through a very long tunnel for the entire course of that first drop, which makes it feel more intense. And then obviously both vertical loops are intense. It's an arrow. Duh.
Yeah.
And
Come
then
on.
having that sidewinder element, having the fact that this coaster features heart lining and all of the new aspects of
Yeah.
modern roller coaster design. This is actually my favorite arrow that I've probably been on,
Oh, dang.
honestly. Like I really
Those
do.
are some
Yes.
words from Gabe people you do not know.
Other than maybe like the Loch Ness monster, and I haven't been on that since they retracted, so I don't know how that ride experience is. But I'd say this is way more intense than that.
Oh,
This is
dang. Okay.
way more intense than the Loch Ness monster. So, in my opinion, I really do think this is probably my favorite arrow, and it's just a blast to be on. I really do love this roller coaster. Oh wait, I forgot about Magnum. That's not. Yeah, wow. The second favorite
Okay.
arrow I've
Okay.
been on. Let's say that. But yeah, this roller coaster I really love. It's a terrain coaster. It's situated in
Definitely
the
a
hills
terrain
of
coaster.
Dollywood. Every roller coaster at Dollywood is a terrain coaster. But
Yes.
I just really love this ride experience. It's like I said, it's one of my favorites. Every time I go back to Dollywood, I've been there 3 times now. I get make sure to get at least 1 or 2 rides on this thing, and it's just a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. It just sounds like it. I feel so bad that I don't remember it. But I was telling Gabe when we went to Dollywood, we kind of focused on lightning rod, obviously, especially now that they've taken the launch out of that thing. But it sounds like it was a really great coaster. And like Gabe said, it's really interesting. If anybody doesn't know what Arrow is all about, they're elder roller coaster company, and they did everything by hand. So it's
Yes.
really interesting to have a coaster out there that actually has computer designing on it and the heart lining like Gabe is talking about. It makes it like arrows are already very unique experiences because of the way they were built and the time they were built in. So to have a new age arrow almost, it would make it a very unique experience to just within arrow itself. So
Well,
it
the
would
the biggest thing is with Tennessee Tornado is the biggest complaint about arrows is that they're roughed, uncomfortable, and
mhm.
they're not fun ride experiences because of that. This takes that out. So you get a smoother, more enjoyable ride experience with larger, more drawn out elements. And that's what makes this very unique for me and why I love it so much because it takes everything I love about Arrow, just kind of scales it up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then it's smooth, it's enjoyable, it's re-rideable. Like the Demon, you ride once. Like the Demon at Great America, you ride it once and then you're done.
Yep.
Like you don't really want to ride that twice. Tennessee Tornado, you can re-ride multiple times, and I have done that where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna ride this 4 times. So for that aspect, that's why I really enjoy this coaster so much.
Oh yeah. Well, and we can talk about the park that it's at too. Dollywood is always a great park, and they've got a pretty good lineup nowadays. So I can just imagine to cheese and crackers. I forgot what I was gonna say. Goodness gracious. Well,
Brain fart.
yeah.
It does have good theming, I'll say that.
I was gonna ask about that because I mean, obviously,
Yes.
tennis or tornado. So tell me about the theming on this ride.
Yeah, so Tennessee Tornado has some pretty good theming, in my opinion, at least. It is an all brown roller coaster, which is kind of boring. But the trains are really cool because they have like a rusted kind of like metally look to them. They look
Ooh.
like they're made out of just like flat steel that is like kind of just like welded and riveted together. And I think that's really cool. And then the station's really cool because you walk up in there. They have like a little windmill thing at where you when you walk into the entrance that like spins, and then there's like
Oh.
tornado warning signs and all that kind of stuff. And it's like in this really old rickety barn is the station for it. So I think in that aspect, there's signage everywhere too and stuff. So it does have some pretty good theming. I just love the way the trains look on it because it looks like that's a good way. You ever seen like those classic kind of like I call them rat rods, where they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're not painted, they're just like metal, and
Yes.
they're just like grounded down metal, and it has a little bit of rust on it, and it looks just kind of old, but like still cool. That's how the
Yes.
trains look. Um,
Yes.
that's the other thing too with this. This has the newest Aero trains on it,
Ooh.
and so they are a little bit more comfortable. Those restraints are they're a little bit bulkier. They're not like I know the restraints on Demon feel like you're hitting a rock when they
Yeah.
come down on you.
Yes.
Where these are a little bit softer. They have a little more squish to them. The restraints are just designed slightly different. That they're just more comfortable. They feel more comfortable, in my opinion.
Very
And
nice.
that's another reason why this coaster is really good. And I think this is one of the reasons to go to Dollywood. I mean, you have obviously Lightning Rod, which is like, yeah, you got to go ride that. You have
Yep.
Thunderhead, which is really good. Wild Eagle, the B&M Wing Coaster, I think that is really good. And then this is the next coaster on the list, but that's kind of why it gets forgotten, is because
Yeah.
there are those other three coasters. Now they opened Big Bear Mountain, so that's a Vekoma family launch coaster that they put in. So it does get buried. It is a very short layout, but I think it's a very good layout.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's just a lot of fun. I love it. It's one of my favorite coasters for a reason.
Having Gabe describe the theming on this ride, I'm like having very vague recollections of this now.
Are you?
I do think I remember the windmill that he's talking about. So, but yeah, no, it's a lot of the times these kinds of coasters that are super fun and stuff, like Gabe said, it's never at the top of a top 15 or anything like that, but it's always a fan favorite. And it always is just another coaster you can ride at the park. It's another credit. It's always fun. It's probably a ride you'll get off smiling. It'll make you have a great day at the park. So, all in all, and that's both
Both
of
of
these
these
coasters,
coasters,
honestly, in a
as I
sense.
say, both of these coasters, you'll never get a bad ride on them. I think that's true. I really do. You'll never get a bad ride on the Whizzer, and you'll never get a bad ride on the Tennessee Tornado.
Absolutely agree. But with that, who do you think won this battle, Gabe?
That's a good one. This really is a good one, and there's two reasons for it. Obviously, the Wizard nostalgia factor
Oh,
through
yeah.
the roof. Tennessee Tornado history factor, but the Wizard also has that. The Tennessee Tornado, I think, though, is going to have to take it just for the intensity reasons, just because it is located in Dollywood, one of my favorite parks of all time that I've been
Hmm.
to. And I'm an Arrow guy over a Schwarzkopf guy. You know this. So
Yes.
I think at the end of the day, it is a very close one. I will say that. But Tennessee Tornado, I think, wins this battle for me.
And I think I'm actually going to disagree with you and say the Wizard. And I
Damn
think
Schwarzkopf lover. Man, man.
I was just about to say I'm finding out that I really love Schwarzkopf rides. And then this is a nostalgia factor for me. It's at our home park. I've ridden this thing forever. And then unfortunately, for some reason, I just don't remember riding Tennessee Tornado,
Well, I
which
think when when me and you were at the park, it was during their holiday event. It was a
Yep.
very, very busy night, and I'm pretty sure we only got one ride on it to get more rides on the other coasters that were at the park. That's probably
Yes.
why you don't remember it. We did ride it at night, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that
Hmm.
was the other thing I kind of forgot about. We did ride it at night the one time we did ride it, and that blew it out of the water for me.
Yeah.
Going through a tunnel is dark enough as it is, and then when you come out the other side, it's still dark.
I do want to put a little caveat here is just because I don't remember it does not mean that this is a bad experience at all. I just have a
No.
terrible memory.
Well,
So,
we were also there for their holiday event. There's also 8 other coasters there that we rode. Every coaster that we were there for, we only rode once except for Thunderhead and Lightning Rod. And then it was also their holiday event. So like Dollywood,
oh
just
my gosh.
side note, must visit holiday event. It is one of the prettiest, well done light shows I have ever been to at an amusement park. And I think that's probably another reason why you're like, whatever. Because when we were there, it wasn't necessarily just about the roller coasters. It was
Yep.
also about the holiday event and the decorations and all the lights and the shows and all that stuff. We were also there with our parents, so it was a full family trip.
Yep.
Normally when we go with other people, we don't necessarily focus on the coasters as much. But
Yes.
that being said, little side note, best holiday event in the music industry is at Dollywood.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. So, after this, what do we have got coming up next? So, are you ready, Gabe, for our next episode?
we should be. I'm not. I have to do some more research for that one, to be honest with you. I
We're
want to make sure this is our best episode we've ever produced. So
Oh, yes. So this is going to be our Son of Beast special. It is we don't know yet if it's going to be 2 parts, but it's probably going to be 2 parts.
I
So,
think it's going to be 2 parts because by the time we're done recording it, I think it's going to be about an hour and a half long. And we're not going to, I feel like when we did our Trip Talks episode, an hour and 15 minutes was already too long.
yeah.
So we're probably going to take it, break it up into 2 parts. It's going to be 45 minutes and then 45 minutes, I think. And the reason that is because we do have to talk about the Rattler because that's part of the story of how the Son of Beast came to be.
Mhm.
And then just talking about the RCCA roller coaster manufacturing company and just there's a lot. There's a lot here. Then we got to talk about the fact of, King Island being a Paramount park, then being
Yep.
sold out, and then how that affected it. We also have to talk about some of the injuries and some of the stuff like that came about because this roller coaster was still in operation when it shouldn't have been.
Mhm.
And it's a whole thing. There's like, when I talk about this as like a movie level story in real life, that's really what happened with this coaster.
Oh yeah, when I plugged this last season, I was like, if you're a true crime person, if you love podcasts and you have like 5 different true crime ones that you listen to, this is the one episode in our podcast that will totally scratch that itch for you. It's basically true crime but roller coasters.
Yes, for sure. And this is where I can nerd out and talk about just the history and how it became a thing. And you can nerd out and talk about like all the true crime side of it. And it's just going to be a blast. It's going to be a lot of
Oh,
fun.
it totally is. So that is going to be our next couple episodes. But then after that, I just want to plug real quick. We're going to do defunct coasters that you wish you could have ridden. And me and Gabe have 2 real fun ones coming there. And then
Oh,
after
for
that,
sure.
we're going to talk about defunct ones we have ridden. So,
Yeah, so the coaster that I'll be bringing to that episode is a defunct coaster I wish I hadn't ridden. We'll just leave it at that.
oh yeah, and mine is a small little coaster. It was literally it wasn't even at a theme park. It was at a mini golf course in Wisconsin. So it's really kind of crazy that
It
this
is a good
thing.
one, though. That is a good
Yes.
coaster. Good
Yes, it
layout. Very
is.
unique coaster. Very unique
Yes.
coaster.
So, thank you everybody for listening. A reminder that you can oh my gosh, send us any episode suggestions, any questions, anything to our email at coasterwarspodcast@gmail.com or interact with us on the socials. We are on Twitter, We're on X, we are on Instagram, and we are on Facebook. Go ahead and comment on anything if you want to have any suggestions or anything like that. And we will see everyone next week.
I wish you all have a great day.